Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
I'm K2SO. I'm a reprogrammed Imperial droid.
Well, welcome back to another, what promises to be another wacky week here at Happy Acres. The reason I'm out here today instead of in the other office is I've got an order I'm plotting, which is the best way to start a week, with a big old fat order for templates. So that's happening in the other room, so can't hear myself think, much less hear myself make a video. So I'm out here in the dining room, and I'm working on K2. Let me check the white balance here. Yes, that's a little bit better. And what I'm working on this morning is trying to dress up the inner part of the neck here using the Q from the action figure, and it has all that nice detail down inside there. So I'm just going to mock up some detail that works well with that. And huzzah on handsprings, my neck is here. Someday my neck will come. So let me open this up and see how it looks, and we'll take it from there. And here's what the neck piece looks like when it's connected to the shoulder piece. And also it's got this nice little baked in angle for the underside of the skull. Now I can start working on that joint, which is going to take up a lot of the good fun of this weekend, or this week, sorry. But I can see now where pieces like this are meant to overlap and give nice little bits of fun to this. Yeah, that's gonna really look nice now. Okay, we got the neck ready to be built up, and now I can cut the inside of this and pop this ball in here, so that, or I maybe just be able to epoxy that straight to it. Use this hole here as a screw and just kind of screw it all down. I'm not really worried about running lighting out of the base, because this head is so big and cavernous and all of that, that any lighting or audio or anything I want to put, I can put in the top of it and run from a switch that, you know, maybe I can touch underneath here and have the switches work. So I don't really need to worry about running wiring down and out. Anything, like I said, it's going to be run on batteries. So now that I've got these, I can really start working on the mechanics of it. Okay, I'm practicing on the neck to figure out how I'm going to do exactly this ball joint, and I practiced on the bottom of the neck since I won't be needing it. But it's good to know that it is very solidly cast from about, looks like from about here up is solid, which is the best news I could have hoped for. Well, I do believe, I think I've got the problem solved if now I only have to do is implement it. Here you see a ball that has been let into the base here and screwed into, there's one flat spot on that ball, so I screwed it to that plate. The plate is being held up by a couple of wedges here to make sure that the ball stays tight against the plate, the bottom plate there. And when I pop it into the neck, it fits in there quite nicely, and I get to do all of the posing and moving around that I want to. Now, do this upside down so you can see it. It's important to note that this is the wrong end. This was the end I practiced on. This is the end I need to cut out, and I need to cut it out or bore it out till about there, where my little thumbnail is. If I can hollow it out to that point and then stick it down on top like that, then it should be able to do exactly what I needed to do for the rest of this base thing. So what I'm going to do is kind of put this together on its base right now so you can kind of see the overall dimensionness of it. And then you can see where I have to hollow that out, sit that down on top, and then the head will be able to fit on top of it. What I'm thinking to do is to reinforce this top edge. I'm going to get a little pipe clamp, one of those old-fashioned ones that had the little set screw on it, so that when I reinforce this, when I cut this out, it'll reinforce it so that this won't want to bust out. By putting a metal band around it, not only will it look appropriate, but I think it will help reinforce that. Plus it might give me an area to put a set screw into the side, like you see on tripods, camera tripods and things like that, so that I can, in case this ends up being loose inside there, I can, once it's sat down, I can run a screw into it to hold it in place. And I think that will do everything I needed to do. Again, this is the bottom end because I was practicing with it, but it is just the right thickness and width for that wooden ball to fit up in it. So, yay! I have a lot of dust in my future tomorrow as I want to hollow that out. Okay, I've taken the ball and the plate off of the neck so that I could stack everything together, and you can get an idea of what its total size and or volume is going to be when it is finished. Yeah, like that. And I'll be able to put like a quizzical angle or something on the head. Hopefully it'll look real nice. Well, welcome back. It is Tuesday today, and it got cold out all of a sudden. It just turned really bone-chillingly cold out. So no priming, no big work. I was going to take this out onto the back porch and do the drilling out today, because I can put it on a drill press and drill that out. But as cold as it is, I just can't sit on the back porch and do that today. So I decided to do a little bit of detail work in the collar instead, just to dress this up and make it look a little bit less, well, a little more interesting, a little bit less drab. I'm still looking for a circular ring that I can put there that will give me that taller edge that I can paint an accent color. Going to say everything kind of goes like this. I want to put this on the belt sander and sand it down at an angle so that everything tilts back a little bit more like that. So I need to take some off of the back of this to help it tilt. And then once I get this drilled out, I could put these rings on it. They kind of go like this, and then one gets glued about halfway down. It gets glued about like that. But I don't want to do any of this kind of fussy work until this has been drilled out. And then of course the top plate sits on it like that. You saw the joint that I had in there before, and that's going to sit down in there and give me my axes of rotation and all of that. So that's where we're kind of sitting today. Welcome back. It is Wednesday. It is Valentine's Day. It is also Ash Wednesday. So that means, of course, I will be watching some Evil Dead tonight. Cleaning up these neck pieces, and it's actually warmed up a bit outside to the point where I can drill out the top of the neck piece. It's the only piece you don't see here, so let's go find it. Here it is. It was in the other room hiding. I went out and picked up a hose clamp, just because I want to use this to reinforce the neck area, the walls, after I drill out a lot of that. Plus it makes a nice detail. It's got that little bolt on the back. Once you paint it up with the rest of it, it's going to disappear. But the idea is to sculpt out enough of that this ball will sit down in it. And to that end, I need to take it outside and put it on the drill press. Okay, here you can see the small mountain of debris that was taken out of the neck piece. Let me put this down. Let me show you the result. Here is the hollowed out neck. And there's the band I put on there to reinforce, which I think was a good idea, because those walls, I didn't want them running the risk of collapsing or the bit coming out of the side of them, and that gave me a little bit more stability. But now, I can set that down. Now, I can sit the ball in here, and I've got a good ball joint. And the plate, which will be glued into the bottom of the head plate, all I got to find is some good way to lubricate that. May need to sand that ball down a little bit, just so that it, I kind of like that it's got some friction to it, because that means it'll hold the position of the head when I move it. So it's a delicate balance. I either make it too loose and then have to put set screws in, or I make it too tight, and then I run the risk of breaking it every time I try to move it. Okay, I've got it washed out and smoothed, and you can see, of course, it's still a bit rough in there, but that, no one's going to see that. Doesn't have to be but so pretty. Now there is a baked-in angle here. This is the angle on the piece. It goes from there to there, and you can see where that metal band is, what the straight level would be. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand that down or remove that so that that is straight, because that baked-in angle is actually taking away some of my fun on the back there. It's not allowing me to move the head in certain positions. So I'm going to take that off to make that a straight cut, but I'm getting all kinds of good fun angles now because of that ball in there. So let me while I got the big tools out, get the sander out and sand that. I know it's upside down, sorry. Let me take that angle off so that it's flat. And I also want to put a little bit of an angle on the bottom piece there to fit on the neck collar a little bit better. So while I've got the big tools out and I'm all dusty anyway, you don't want to see how much resin powder I've got all over me between the masks and the gloves and the respirators and everything else. I want to take some of that off, and that off, of course. Okay, here's kind of a look of everything together. Pardon me while I drag out this chair. That's the head, which is going to be its own separate animal, sitting on top of, let me put the camera down, hold on a second. There we go. Sitting on top of this posable neck, which I can go this way, this way, this way. Now I can't really show you that with the head attached because it's way top heavy. There's a lot of bolting and gluing that needs to happen with this neck before I can do that. Most notably, I need to bolt this piece neck into the base because it's very top heavy. But what this allows me to do, there's the neck without the plate in there, and then here's the plate with the ball in here. I'm going to wax up that ball to make it more slippery, and we'll see if we just need to do that and then drill a hole and make a set screw. But what I really like about it is I can use this clamp that's on here. Excuse me, I had to sneeze out some extra resin dust. But I can tighten that screw, and that'll actually put pressure on that ball to keep it in one place. So you're not going to be jumping up and down on this thing and posing it wildly, but I can go in, loosen that screw, change the pose, tighten it back down, and have my fun that way. But once I get all of this kind of nailed together and solidified, then I can go and start tackling the idea of the eyes and electronics and all that kind of stuff, and see if I really am happy with these contours, or whether I want to try to even pare that down even a little bit more, round off the top. I've got plenty of resin on the inside, especially on the top, so I could go a little bit, shave a little bit more off of there so it's not quite so square, but we'll see. Let's get this guy going. And I think today, while that's setting up, I may actually put a first coat of paint on Maria. How about that? Yeah, I'm far enough away from it that I can capture it all in the same picture. That's it, kind of sitting like how it's going to look. I have a question that I'm trying to figure out for myself as to whether or not I want to keep the right to left turning at this joint down here. Since I put a big old bolt through it, I could keep the right to left turning here and then do all of that type of stuff from here without having to worry about turning the head right to left. I could do all of the posing and things like that from the neck, but leave the right to left turning, the big right to left turning at the base of the neck. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Now I just need to solidify a few things, and see, that's the big. I'll wait. I need to slather this with a bunch of epoxy to really nail that in place. And then I need to figure out how the best way to solidify that joint there. So right now that comes out, and if I want to I can tighten it here to tighten the ball down, and there's the bolt going into the bottom, which gives me the left to right turning. As long as I don't do it a lot, I think it'll be fine. I may want to put some sort of thread locker or some epoxy on the bolt itself so it doesn't want to come loose. Leave the joint movable, but lock the threads down. And then all that's left is getting these guys glued up in place, and then sitting that down into a big pile of epoxy. Coming along. Let's go paint Maria. Okay, it's time to put a coat of paint on Maria. Now, you know how I feel about painting metallics. It shows every little knock and flaw, and this thing ain't nothing but a ton of knock and flaws. So it's not going to be pretty, folks. Excuse me. But what I want to do is to get a coat of this bronze in here, and then we'll start playing with the highlights and the finishes. But the bronze is going to go into all of the deep recesses, and then we'll see if we need to further heighten or darken the shadows with a darker black. Don't want to put rust on this, don't want to put any grime or weathering on it, because Maria is a new creation. Also, 100-year-old German film. Well, not 100, I exaggerate, but a very old German silent movie. So it's not going to be, I guess if it's a silent movie, it doesn't really matter what language it was shot in. The thing is, it wouldn't do to make it look like a highly exotic, space material, even though it's supposed to be futuristic. But I don't want it to be, ugly either. So it's going to be a fun experiment and exactly what kind of finish this is going to have. But we're going to start with the bronze. And here is the Maria with the first coat of the bronze on the front side. I will let this get good and dry before I flip her on her tummy and spray her back. But looks kind of chocolatey brown, but it is definitely metallic. And some of it came out very nice, and some of it not so nice. But there are a lot of little nooks and crannies on this thing, and rather than just hang on, just hunker the gun over it and spray it, excuse me, I thought it better to do light coats. Then I'll come back in, like there's spots in between her toe things there that I really have to go back and get. But I'll do that with lighter coats so that I don't end up getting too heavy of a coat on this. Obviously, a heavier coat would be nice because it fills in some cracks, some scratches and nicks and things like that, which will be good. But bad because metallics have a tendency to get runny, and you don't want them looking like a runny mess. So split the difference, and we'll come back to this in a bit. And here is Maria engaging in a little bit of planking. Trying to get her up far enough off of the ground here so that the fingertips aren't rubbing against anything, but I don't want to get it up so high that it becomes unwieldy. So let's get some paint on her backside. Well, her entire backside. And there she is, all completely covered on her backside as well. So time to let that dry, and then come back to it after it has had a good chance to dry, and see if there are any little nooks or crannies that excuse me, that I missed. I'll stand it up and then see if there's anything that I missed that I need to hit before we start doing any additional finishes. Good morning, it's Thursday, and I need to finish getting an order ready and out the door today. But before I do turn the machine on for the day and start making a bunch of noise, I thought I'd catch you up on a couple projects. Yes, here we have Maria on her back. She prefers keeping on her back. Lovely bird, the Norwegian blue. but she's ready for her top coat, or one of her top coats, because it's cold outside. You need more than one top coat. And here is the neck for the K2SO, the base plate and neck. And I've just finished filleting or filling in some gaps around these parts, and I used the silver tulip. I thought it was appropriate, but it's very good for gap filling. The bottom one I actually used a little bit of the spot putty on, and then after that dried, I went in this morning and put in the silver tulip. I think I've decided that what I'm going to do is keep the right to left turning on this joint. It's this guy right here. I can turn right to left and do those big gross movements at that juncture, and then I can turn the head on. I'm sorry, my hand is off camera while I'm doing it, so you can't really tell. Put the neck in place, and then the head I can turn angles front and back, and this way and this way on the neck, and then leave the big turning to the whole neck down here. So what I want to do is fill this as much as I can with the epoxy. I'll give it the 5-minute stuff, and then I want to stick this guy in at a bit of an angle so that it is, from the side you can see better, zoom back out, so that it is actually back at a bit of an angle. That gives him more of the chicken neck that he has, rather than doing it straight up and down. So what I need to do is fill, and now hopefully we'll lock this bolt in place as well at the same time by filling, not filling it all the way up, that would be stupid, but filling it a goodly amount of the way up with epoxy, and then sitting the neck in it like that, which will also give me the stability I need. Now, last night, you did not see this because I did not show it. I took some epoxy sculpt and I wet it down and I mooshed it into the bottom to get this, so that the bottom of this semicircle is really smooth now. And I used the ball to kind of, and I kept it, I used one that was slightly smaller than this, and I kept it wet, and I just kind of pushed it around in here to really smooth out the walls of this indent. So now that fits in here like a glove, and I can use this screw here to tighten it or to loosen it as I need to, because the head, when you get on top, does add quite a bit of amount of weight. So let's mix up some epoxy, and then I can start plotting the order today, and you don't need to hear any of that. Okay, this needs some cleanup now. I forgot, or I miscalculated, or something, the amount of expansion once the epoxy started curing. I had everything held in position, and then it started just jumping out of this joint, the expanded epoxy, which is good because that means it's filled up even more of that cavity than I was planning, but it means there's some cleanup now. Some sanding and some cleanup that's going to have to take place around there, but I'm going to let that cure for a good long while. I did manage to capture some of the escaping epoxy and use it to epoxy this plate down. But now we've got that good to go. Let's see, we got that lined up, we got that lined up with the front, we got the head ready to go, and now I can set. Ooh, that's heavy. That's way heavy. It's high. It's very high. But now we've got the entire head sitting on the neck, sitting on the plate, and it is able to hold the angle. I think I'm going to do something like this with just a little bit of a head tilt quizzical angle and a little bit of a turn, and that'll look good once I get the eyes in and get the rest of it all painted up. So that's where we're going to let this sit for a while I go take care of a few other things. Okay, I like what's happening here. I took the airbrush, puts a little bit of pale burnt metal. This is the Vallejo metal colors that I like so much, and it's the pale burnt metal. It's not what I would call a cool silver. It's more of a warm silver, and I'm just lightly going over the bronze from yesterday, and it's giving me quite the nice look. It's not sinking into all the crevices. That's for the bronze, but it's giving me some nice highlights, and it's giving me quite an unusual metallic color that I'm not used to seeing everywhere. So I'm gonna let this dry for a second or two, and then since this stuff dries so quickly and I don't have to worry about getting my fingerprints on it, which is enough to make me love it just by that alone, I'm gonna flip it over and do the backside. Okay, I didn't want to bring this up until I found out whether it worked or not, but I did bow to a little bit of internal nagging and put a very, very, very light misting of gold. This is the Vallejo Air Model Air gold. It is by no means is it 3PO gold or brass instrument gold or chrome gold, but it just has enough of a shine to break up. Now I think I may go over this one last time with even a lighter coat of the bronze to kind of knock it back in the shadows. But by and large, I'm very happy with how this turned out. Now I just have to come up with some appropriate base for it, some sort of background. I mean, you're used to seeing the Art Deco flourishes behind it. So, and to tell you the truth, her feet are kind of puny, and it is a bit top heavy, and I really would like to epoxy it down to some sort of base to keep it stable. Some sort of little tiered Art Deco thing. So I'm going to be thinking about that, and maybe get to working on that tomorrow or into the weekend. Okay, and here is the K2SO neck with a coat of primer on it. So everything is kind of the same color now. It should help unify things. I'm going to see if I'm going to do some more detailing on this as far as putting more greeblies on the neck. But by and large, I'm very happy with it. It still does the right to left turning here, and everything else happens because of this. I've gone another round of primer and Bondo on the head. I want to smooth that down some more still, and I may get the sander out, the power sander out with a finer grit paper, because I'm not liking all of the scratches that I end up putting in here when I use the heavier grit. So maybe a lighter or a finer grit paper, and maybe we'll start to getting some coats of black on this pretty soon. Well, howdy ho neighbors, it's Friday. It's hot as all get out outside. It's actually low 80s today, and we're still in freaking February. So I want to get outside and sit on the deck with a beer. So what I'm going to do now, and it's a beautiful day to be priming. So that's why I want to be outside, do some work on this, set it out, and take it outside and prime it. So what I'm working on now is some little details to go inside the neck recess here, the collar recess. And I just plotted out some shapes in vinyl that I'm going to use to stick down onto some sheet styrene so that I can cut them out and stick them down, much like I did these raised panels here. And then I think I may try to take some of these shapes and stick them again to the raised surfaces to make them a little bit more prominent. We'll see how it works out. Okay, with all of the detail added to the collar, I think this is ready for its first coat of primer over top of these bits, and we'll see how well everything gets camouflaged. And you will never see these googly eyes again. They will look like dimple or rivets instead of googly eyes. Well, this is starting to look like something. I put the first coat of a black primer on it, or a very, very dark gray primer on it. Dark automotive, gray automotive primer. It doesn't really matter if it's from a dark gray automotive or not. But you can see what it does to all those details that I put in. So gonna let this sit, and we'll start sanding on that and smooth it all up. But now that it's closer to the actual finished color, you can get a better appreciation for all of the nice design work on it. Okay, I've kind of had to bring this out into the other room to put it all together because it's too big for the drawing table. But again, once you see the color on it, it really starts to take life. Of course, the big deal is getting the eyes put in, but and start put the details on, and you know, the little nicks and dings and things like that. And then I'm going to decide what color, automotive color. Obviously, it's supposed to be more of a satin or a gloss black, but I may go with an off black because black, like white, has a tendency to look fake. So I'm going to go with, I don't know yet, but this will be ready for a little bit more sanding and the polishing work starting next week. And I think I've accomplished what I wanted to with Maria, because it's depending on where she is, she's a different color. Outside in the sunlight, she's one color. Outside in the shade, she's another color. Here under fluorescence, she's another color. On camera, she's another color. I like it. It's harder to nail down. She's not the obvious stereotypical, brass trombone gold color. She's certainly not 3PO colored. But I am going to have to come up with some little base to nail her down to, because her wee tiny feet are not quite big enough for this top heaviness. I tried balancing her as best I could, and if I set her on glass, she's perfectly fine. But any little bump to the table and over she goes. So I definitely need to put her on some sort of more stable base. That, my friends, is where we're going to end it for this week. I got quite a bit done. Was surprised. Was able to get through it without too much interference. Got Maria. Once I got her built, painting it was no big deal. Now, because it's metallic, every little nick and flaw is going to show up. So the next thing I need to do is figure out how to best display her. I'm going to put her on some sort of base, maybe put a backdrop behind her. I'm not quite sure. That's job one. Job two is K2SO's head. It's going along pretty well. The neck joint, getting that worked out was the big obstacle, and I think that came out well. And now that I'm starting to put actual color on it, the next hard thing to do is going to be to figure out how to do the eyes, exactly what kind of lighting to use. And then I think I'm going to put some audio clips in there. A good buddy of mine was able to isolate some audio clips from the film, and I think I'm going to put some on the card like you've seen me do in the past. I thought about doing audio clips for Maria, but silent movie, no audio. So I have a bunch of empty buttons that did nothing. Let's see. Yeah, get some memorable quotes from K2SO and put those, and I'll be able to work everything into his head. I mean, it's a big empty space in there. Don't say anything to Alan about that, but it's a big empty space inside that head, so plenty of room to put a speaker and to put some sound clips and a sound card and all that kind of good nonsense. And I could chuck a 12-volt battery up in a car battery in there. There's not that much room. So until next week, when we're back on that, we'll finish up the base for Maria. We'll maybe finish at K2SO next week. Who knows? Until next week, be good to each other. Weather's getting nice. Go outside and play. Talk to you next week.